Hello, John Greaves.
Hello, John.
Hey, John.
Hey, John.
Yes, I am here and I am listening. I have to tell you something straight up. I have no comments today. I found the forms as submitted to be perfect. And unless I'm invited to perhaps cast aspersions on personalities, I'm likely to be awfully quiet.
Do you need to be invited?
Yes, no. We like to formalize these
To
processes.
cast aspersions?
Yeah.
Right. So just press on amongst yourself.
Okay.
So do stay close though, John, because there is a topic that's going to come up here from the conversation that we had with legal. So please
be there.
don't run away from us. Thank you.
I'm here. Bye-bye.
Yes, sir.
So I have shared the deck, and I took the liberty of inserting a photo that David had arranged for us to take. And John, you'll be happy to know that that is actually my garden. It's a proper English garden. This is the lower garden. I thought you'd like
lovely.
to see this because, you know, we do all things English in my household, as you know.
Is that appropriate social distancing?
It is,
I think so.
actually. Yeah.
We
Yeah, the
intended that.
conversation. It's actually a great photo. So guys, we do have a hard stop at 2 because I know some folks have to run. So I'm going to just quickly move forward. We've talked about this. We remember our antitrust policy that is, in fact, still totally enforced. We're going to move to the agenda. So what I'm going to ask for is a quick roll call. So we have Jeff Hurley, we have Michael Darden, Linda Getz, John Greaves, and myself. We do have a quorum, so we can proceed. Here's the agenda as it stands today. I have changed it from the email that I sent to you a couple days ago. There will not be any decisions required today. We're just not ready. So can I have a motion to approve the agenda as it stands?
Motion to approve.
I'll second it.
Okay, thank you. And the meeting minutes, I did send those as well. Have you all had a chance to review those? Because I would not like to have to review those if I do not have to.
No, reviewed them. If they remain the same as what was sent, then I second to approve them.
Okay, so
Or I
Motion to approve.
first it.
Second.
okay, so I got a first and a second. And any nays on that? Okay, hearing none. The minutes are approved, and that is, by the way, for August 14th and the 17th. Those were both sent.
Yeah.
Excellent. Okay, moving forward now. So Michael and I had a good conversation with Keith Lutz, who is the IP attorney. I want to just sort of tee up and give you the highlights of that conversation. We specifically discussed the bylaws and the contributing member agreement. And Keith's observations and suggestions are that we add another type of member, and this would be a non-equity DFM member. Additionally, and we're going to get to this in the next slide, I'm just giving you the highlights now of the conversation for context. He suggested that we continue to move any of the corporate language to the bylaws, and in keeping, John, with your suggestion, so he even went further than you to move stuff over in the corporate bylaws and keep it in one place, which makes a lot of sense. He also said it's really important to clearly define in the revised bylaws what the board does and what the steering committee does. And these are, again, our additions to the bylaws, which, by the way, we have a running list of changes to the bylaws. He also suggested that we add these member classes and their criteria, distinction, et cetera, make it very clear, and add that to the bylaws, meaning it comes out of the member agreements. Again, John, this is in keeping with what you had suggested. And he also made a point that the bylaws should be public documents. Everyone gets them. Contributing members, steering committee members, et cetera.
And possibly even on the main website.
Yes. Yeah.
Transparently.
Yeah. Yep. And there's 2 more specific things that he discussed, but I'm going to pause there because I think it's important for us to tackle this first thing, which is adding a non-equity DFM member class. So what does this look like? This is something that would then go into the bylaws, right? We make it really clear that these are the types of members that we have. Contributing member, no change. Support staff, no change. Those are C and D for now, right? C for contributing, D for DFM. The equity DFM, no change here. But this is the member class N for non-equity. Keith's recommendation. It's a lesser one-time payment. We chose 50,000, half of 100. They do not receive a share. Therefore, they do not sign documents that the shareholders have to sign, nor do they sign a license agreement, of course. So they do sign documents, but they're not a shareholder.
Well, they actually would sign a license agreement.
But a different type of license agreement, correct?
Yeah. Yeah, it's not going to be it's not going to be a subscription agreement. It would just be a license agreement for the use of the product. And that was really the clarifying moment that I heard from Keith, was that by having this second class classification, not second class, but second classification of member that doesn't require the equity piece is a benefit for our antitrust care, where some of these companies may have in their bylaws that they're not allowed to be able to own equity in other companies, and it would be forbidding them from being able to participate because of the fact that their bylaws don't allow them to be able to participate. And whether it's 150 for the member class with equity and 50 for the other, or 150, he said that's all up to us, for us to be able to determine what the value is. But the ability to work with entities that are both able to have an equity stake in a company and those that don't is an important and compelling reason for us to be able to bring this up for discussion in this meeting. And frankly, why we decided to not look to push for a vote here, because this is different and it requires a little bit of thought, because there's this non-equity DFM member is not going to be voting on anything. That they're here with the benefit of being able to participate by sharing their data and having a transaction fee that they are authorized to collect from their shipper customers for being able to digitally match transactions. And we would still have our fee structure with them to be able to be paid that. And they would have to be able to continue in operation with the connection with the utility for their ongoing license. But as Denise was saying, that license would be a little different.
Could they have working group participation? It looks as if they're precluded from being on the steering committee, but what about actually working on standards and new features?
So the way that Keith described it was that they wouldn't even have access to that quote ideas portal. They're literally just a user. And features wise, I think those are up to us to decide of what the differentiators are between the two of them. But there's also, just good thought that needs to go into each one of them. And we're intentionally slowing down here to have this meeting today with the steering committee to talk about this, because it's a big deal. And in my first 30 minutes of thought on it, as we were going through it with Keith, it doesn't make sense to me for the first 20 companies to be this type of this, non-equity type. We want these companies that are part of the governance, that are part of the leadership and driving the direction of where it goes. And if we don't have that with these first 20 companies that come in play, there aren't going to be enough candidates to be able to fill the DFM spots for those roles. So I think it's imperative that if we're contemplating putting this new classification in, which Denise, you never cease to amaze me of how you got this updated since yesterday at 3:00 and have it so that it describes this accurately. But this is what it would sort of look like as we understand it best from the discussion with Keith. But it's not for Keith to decide this future, or for me to decide this, or for Denise to decide it at the point of where we hear from Keith. It's our job to bring it to the steering committee, and that's why I really wanted to be able to have it so that this discussion took place. And I told Denise, don't worry about a vote, because this is important and it'll change the way that we modify the bylaws. And we need to take this time to really think about this.
Yeah, I'm thinking about them not having a vote and how that's differentiable between them being able to engage with the platform and the conversation, having an ultimate say. I mean, there may be some of them that really do want to participate on an equity level, and because of their bylaws already in existence, and they may not be able to change that as a publicly held company. We don't know all the parameters, but to
Right.
say that they can't participate even in the, you know, submitting ideas for being that
Again,
just seems
I don't think he was thinking it through of is it a good business move. He was just creating an example for the furthest end of the spectrum that he could come up with off the top of his head as an example. It could be anything that we lay out for it to be, but it needs to be defined in the bylaws specifically of what each of those classes have.
Right.
So that's really his point more than anything else, and it's why, you know, it's for discussion and then decision and then documentation. And there's some edits that are going to need to be done to the license agreements if we go this route. But again, if we also go this route and identify that it's not required of the first 20 participants, it could also enable DFM Data Corp to be able to have the agreements that are in place more quickly and be able to satisfy the requirements of the companies that are waiting for those documents to be able to engage in what we've identified as an equity participation opportunity.
Yeah, you almost would want to charge more for the non-equity participation and give them a right of engagement. I don't know if that's just popped into my head. You know, they might want to be streamlined. If you're thinking they've just potentially seen what the Fuller team showcased as the cost savings. We may have companies that are wanting to make a digital transformation happen and see this as part of their pathway to doing so, and they want in, right? They are motivated by the value add to themselves, their customers. I mean, it could be important for them to be able to come in a more streamlined fashion, but not necessarily have that vote and ownership.
I think one of Keith's points, you know, in sharing this here is that, you know, we should have another class. What he's basically identifying for us is that we have the opportunity to define the classes, and it doesn't have to be two.
Right.
There could be three, if that's what makes more sense. It could be five, if that's what makes most sense. But that's what the steering committee is about, is digging into these thoughts and laying out the pathway for us to be able to move forward with that at this point. And I think it's important for us to realize that, you know, with the first 40 that we've outlined as being what the first tranche is, and then the next 100 as being the forecast of what's going to take place for how we're going to look to be able to onboard from a member classification standpoint, there's just some thought about where those new roles would come in play.
I have a suggestion.
Thank you, John.
First of all, the best committee is a committee of two where one of them is sick. This falls under the same heading. The best society is a classless society, or if it must have class, there should only be one. To induce early arrivals, early onboarders, and give them some kind of premiership, why not just award them a golden share, an additional premium to their investment, noting that the others who follow will simply be ordinary shareholders without the golden share. So they won't be Class A voting stock, and there'll be a Class B voting stock, which is the schmucks who came late. Often not their fault, but not ours either. So based on that, it's a simple adjustment to the bylaws to state that the first X number of participants who are shareholders, stakeholders, whatever the word you want, are actually going to enjoy this golden token that does something for them. Now, what does it do? I don't know. Maybe they get 4 points above premium on revenue sharing or dividends or whatever, right? But you know, that's for management to consider how to incentivize it and separate it, and for board to approve, and for committee to adopt. So I really do not care for multiple levels of society.
And your input is definitely heard. I just will repeat the fact that what started this whole conversation was Keith's concern on an antitrust side of the
Yep.
fact
Yep.
that there wasn't an availability of a commercial product for someone to be able to come and use without paying the $100,000 to buy stock. And if
Yes.
there was another way for them to be able to do that, that it would preclude or give better
Mhm.
evidence of the fact that we were cognizant of the responsibility.
Understood. But in the terms of antitrust, in other words, the initial part of this discussion, which I was listening to, antitrust only applies if you collude with a party to prevail or prevent other parties from participation on a fair and equitable basis. You're not doing that. We're not doing that. We're saying anyone can buy in and all of you get the same thing. But if we were to say all of you buy in, but the first 40 people will always be price advantaged or service advantaged, or they'll have the first 5 digits of the allocated broker numbering, which means that when a web search is conducted, they'll come up first. That's antitrust. That is like, are you kidding me? But they're operating principles that we will avoid as a company, not, and the board would never approve them anyway. If you could imagine coming along and you know, your software team, Michael, going, oh, great news, we've made it so the first 40 members have got 0001, 000. Oh, really? I see. No, you can't do that. What you've actually got to do is make it so arbitrary that JBH 170909, well, 17 is the year they joined. 09 is the number they used to join. They were the 9th member to join that year, and they joined in month 9. So it's arbitrary. It has a defined set of rules. And JBH, of course, is JB Hunt. And the nomenclature for applying a broker identity or a user identity remains the same throughout. Schneider, SCH, right? Werner, WER. Midwest Freight Brokers, MDW. Oh, but there's also Midwest Freight Brokerage, MDF, and so on and so on. So in writing that as a software evidence of fairness and equitability, you avoid the challenge of being an antitrust victim or colluding with parties of the first party. And the arbitrary search engine will search based on other metrics, like you've really got JBH 091709 has really got a 53-footer empty in Athens, Georgia. Yes, then that's the deal. Not show me the top 40 people in DFM who have an empty trailer in Georgia.
Mhm. Yeah, I want to bring up another point as well when we're looking at equity across the marketplace. We know we have different types of companies. They're engaging with the marketplace differently. So we have that designation. Then we also have different sizes of those companies. As we're looking, to incentivize engagement to create the most equitable marketplace, is there a value add in taking the designations that we've already decided? Well, because of how they do business, we know that they fill these buckets, and saying, 5 of these, 5 of these, 5 of these, and the first 5 in any of their set will be able to be the first mover advantage. You said the golden token, I think, John. Some aspect of
No, I like that a lot, and
benefit.
Preference.
it's a real good thought of the fact that there is categories and different types of DFMs, and we truly want to be able to have representation from what those different types are in the early 40s. So just
And also be aware, on this particular instance, which is unusual because I'm a great believer in the mantra, but in this particular instance, size should not matter.
But what about type of activity in which they engage in the marketplace?
Type has to matter because this is a very early Darden Greaves discussion. What if they're a company that only does reefer? What if they're a company that only do moving? What if they're a company that,
right,
so on and so forth, right?
specialty equipment,
Yeah,
heavyweight freight,
yeah,
oversized loads, all
yeah,
of those specialty
yeah.
things.
So those are, however, those are subsets. So a user being on DFM, asking for a trailer in Athens, Georgia, gets the DFM page up, and it shows 92 trucks who are Athens, Georgia availability on this day in this time window that the user has designated. But then he goes down and he sees, oh my God, or even he's probably fixed it in his local server. Of those 93 trucks, 39 of them are low loaders, 17 are reefers. He's actually only got a choice of 11. And here's his 11. And remember, and keep me right on this, but I'm sure I'm right, but I have been known to be wrong. I remember I was 2 at the time. But we do not publish a rate in DFM.
Right.
That's a matter between the offerer and the buyer.
So, John, are you suggesting that with one class, we still have the class for the contributing member, and we still have the class for the DFM Data Corp support staff.
Yes.
Those are still classes that are existing. If we were to eliminate the member class of the non-equity one that Denise is inserted into the center row here,
Mm-hmm.
we still have the situation of companies that are not able to participate because their bylaws or their governance does not allow them to hold shares of stock of another company.
Oh, but here's interesting, isn't it? Try this one on, if you will. How about, say, JG Freight? That's me. Say JG Freight, a brokerage house, mid-size, small size, based in Cicero, Illinois, right? Who handle largely ISO containers out of the Cicero rail yards
Mm-hmm.
and turning empties and so on and so forth. How about if, in order to participate, right, they went and bought from Central Southwest Roadways, which is one of the big haulers out of Cicero rail yards, a piece of Central Southwest DFM big money thing.
So almost a sub-license?
Yes, between the party of the first party and the party of the third party, because we don't care, do we, so long as we're doing clicks?
I mean, from what I read, there's no sublicensing that is possible in the current documents from any of the DFMs to another
There's not.
entity.
And,
I think that was intentional.
Yep.
no, and that is intentional, and that is quite correct in the context in which we put it together, which was to stop these people diluting our model, or in effect, unfortunately, creating a new phantom market.
Right.
Because they would be colluding with themselves to create ghost ships.
Yeah.
But I wonder if, for the sake of I wonder if, you see, you're not changing that model that's on screen. You're actually, when the person buys in, we're giving them some right to encourage broader participation in their community. They in effect become a chapter manager. And you know, don't listen to me too long, because I might be seeing Michael scratching his head and going, no, not now. I'm too far down the software to do that. And that's fine. That's fine.
There's milestones, there's long-term milestones, and I think the reason why we really wanted to pause here today was related to the fact that, you know, there's a clear distinction of the fact that if somebody, you know, we made the decision as a group, and Denise was quick to point out when we had this discussion with Keith the other day, was that we had decided that we were going to have it so that we weren't going to be raising any funds from VCs, and specifically working with the DFMs in an equity allocation role for them to participate. And that was a very high level strategy decision that the steering committee had come to and had been presented with, and that's reasonable with the information that was known at the time. And the thought that's now come into play after the review is that may be limiting.
Yeah.
And us being specific to those companies that want to be able to bring in revenue and buy equity with that revenue and process transactions through the marketplace, that works fine for them. But for those companies where they want to participate, they want to do this, but they can't, there's an inflexibility on a utility side that is potentially being overlooked. And my thought, again, as I went through it for quite some time, is that I think it may be something of use. I don't think we need it out of the gate.
Thank you.
I think it's useful to be able to know about,
Yep.
and to say we want to be able to have this class of other people, other companies that can come on right after we've finished our sub-Series A raise with the 40 companies that are coming on
Correct.
from an equity opportunity.
Yep. No, Michael, you're absolutely right, because by then, the ripple effect of the first 40 will be such that secondary companies, and that's a horrible phrase, but you know what I mean, lesser players, will want to play and will then find ample justification to join the DFM community for all sorts of valid reasons. They can probably go back to their management and go, hey, boss, you know, we lost 12 grand last month running empty for phantom freight. You know, this solves
There's a
that.
new solution that's out there that does
Yeah.
that and gets us in compliance
Yeah.
with what the industry is going towards.
Yeah.
We should do
Yeah.
this yesterday.
Yeah.
What are we waiting for?
You know, in smaller companies, middle management seeking to adopt and improve often have a problem because you want how much? You're kidding me. Whereas if you can give the guy, the girl, you know, a piece of paper that says, that they can map against and say, last year cost us $97,400 in missed revenue and lost mileage and costs accrued from ghost chasing, that we can resolve with this 50,000. That's over. That's a given. There's your close.
So I think, again, this is a big topic and one that I didn't want to gloss over. I really wanted everybody to have a chance to talk through this. And if you go up one page and look at the agenda, I mean, we modified this so that this is not a decision meeting,
So-
but really a discussion meeting and
Right.
let's identify
So-
what the roadmap is so that we can complete the set of
Right.
documents that we've been working on.
So I believe we leave that column in, but we put note 1, not yet available.
Yeah, and we could also, so write it in the bylaws, but we could also mention that member class N is available after a certain date or X amount of DFM on board,
Yeah,
or
I
at the
agree.
discretion of the board.
That's
I
it.
like the class for its inclusiveness. It doesn't need to, start off at the same time the member class starts off.
Oh,
But I like the idea of having other folks being able to, submit ideas, even though they're not going to be part of the, I'll call it higher
Right.
level governance structure where they, vote on the steering committee.
no, I think what you just said is that these people will belong to FLM. And I totally agree. Freight lives matter. And they'll have their own T-shirts and Black Anarchy shields, and they'll probably go burning down DCs and warehouses. throughout
Oh,
Georgia.
John Greaves.
John.
Oh, come on, people, get a life. Uh,
Bring such levity to situations like this. It's brilliant.
it's because it's necessary, you see, because unfortunately, good people, much as I have made my say and you have been good enough to listen, I regret I have to return to my other thing that's going on in background. But I think we've done this. This was the only thing I saw as a discussion point, Michael, to your point. All the rest of the documents as written are good. The documents, print them, right?
The
They're
last step on the documents, John, is for us to really print all of them and put them side by side and make sure that everything is in the right spot and references everything right. And we got one more legal review from each of the lawyers that's already been like prepaid
Right.
for. So
Right.
the step that's here for us to do is just truly to assemble the rest of these documents. But before we did that, this was a big issue, and it was a big issue that just came up yesterday. And I think it's relevant to add it, but it should also be added under the caveat of the fact that we know it's coming in the next round, and it's just not here right now. But it is something that's on the radar. And if you don't have equity, you'll be in that round too, and we'll have you on the waiting list for that. You can even sign up for the waiting list for that role.
Yeah, sure. I look forward to it. So,
Thank you, sir.
people, it's been a great pleasure, and I must leave. Thanks.
Okay.
Thanks,
Thanks,
John.
John. Thanks, John.
Appreciate you, John.
So guys, going back to this particular, then I think that we are in agreement that we need to add language to the bylaws. We have a running list and we can craft that language so that it gives us some flexibility, but we do need to include a member class N. What I'm not certain about is the voting. Do we say that they would have feature voting or no voting at all? Or do we come to an agreement on that?
I think it sounds like, we don't want to be able to from what I just heard in commentary, it sure sounds like we want to be able to have them be part of the ideas and the voting of
Have a voice, but not a vote.
features.
At the working
Yeah.
group level.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, so features, and I'm fine with that, is the working group, right? That's synonymous, but not steering committee, and that does feel appropriate.
Yep.
Okay,
Yeah. If they have no voice, you do get that
Yeah.
that class that John was talking about.
Yeah, they have to have a feature voice
Yeah.
and be able to see the things that are in the pipeline and what is being governed by the organization that they're a part of.
okay. That makes sense to me. The other change is that.
That also, by the way, that also incentivizes participation on the working groups.
Yeah,
Sure.
it does bring up one other point that we mentioned yesterday as these same comments were being discussed in the early stages was a conversion.
Yeah,
Where somebody were to start at the the member where they don't have equity, but now they've been on the working groups and they really like the organization and they want to be able to have that element of leadership on their title for what they did here with the utility.
Yeah, so let's talk about that because I know there's more, right? But these are the three, I think, main considerations. and Michael was just referring to number 2, we do have to think about how to handle non-equity equity conversions. Can they? What are the T's and C's for that? Are they allowed to? Is this a one and done decision? Assuming that it's not, how long do they have to be in for 90 days? Do they have to show work group participation because we're allowing them to vote on features? Blah blah blah. So this has to be thought out, not right away. Though it doesn't, because if we're saying that we need 40 or 20 DFMs on board of the equity time, we have time to think about it, but we do have to think about it. So that's the second point. I think the first point is actually.
And it should just be kind of current work.
So, I'm sorry, Michael, you were breaking up. Say again.
Sorry, I was just saying Yeah, I was just saying that I think we should just keep it as current work on the agenda, because it's going to need to be defined further as the other elements are thought about.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm
Sir.
going to throw in on John's let's keep it simple side of things. If they could come on board at the equity level today, and yet they come in at the lower level, what would keep us from having that equity level be available to them over time if they just pay whatever the higher level is? Is there really a need to build parameters around that? Do we want to push them not to go into that level by saying that once we hit a certain, it's going to be built in, right, at 400, or there's going to be some plateau where you no longer have that option. But if it's an open option, why should we constrict it with kind of artificial parameters?
I think we just have to spell it out and put it in the bylaws, because we have to think about the other way. What if someone does put in 100K and they go, you know what, we've decided we actually don't want to be in equity. We want to be non-equity and we want our 50 grand back, please. Thank you very much. We have to include that, I think, that language in the bylaws, that this is how it's going to work, just so they know. And it could be as simple as, you can do a non-equity to an equity conversion, period. And if you wanted the opposite, you're not going to get your money back, something like that.
Well, I mean, each one of these shares has provisions that are called restrictions on them, and
Yeah,
they
it's
wouldn't be able
built
to
into the
convert
sale.
those shares.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
it's built into the actual shareholder agreement, in
Yeah.
effect, of what the holding time is and all of that stuff. So
Okay, so that's not a concern. I agree,
yeah,
though.
Yeah.
that direction isn't, but the other way is something to consider.
And I agree with Linda, why put in speed bumps, in terms of the conversion from non-equity equity, let's make it easy.
I completely agree with that thought, but I do still think that we need to include the language in the bylaws that says if you choose to convert from a non-equity to equity conversion, that is possible, period.
Yeah, maybe at the next round or next open round spot.
Yeah.
I mean, if you can imagine that we've got a round of 40 and then a round of 100 and then a round of 160, then if they were in the round of 100 and they decided that they came in at the round of 100, but they were now wanted to convert to equity, that we can't reserve that spot of the 100 for them in that spot. They can get a reservation for the one in the next round.
Okay.
I mean, it incents purchasing in with the equity level
Right now.
right now. Yeah, that would be the real value out of it.
Come on board. We want your voice.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the big picture, is we truly want them to be involved. We want them to be guiding this and be participating.
Yep.
Okay, so for the purposes of the minutes, I'm just going to say that there is a joint agreement that we want to keep the non-equity to equity conversions as simple as possible.
Yep.
If you guys are okay with that.
Yep.
That language. The first one, I do not believe, I didn't see it in the license agreement, I may have missed it, but the fact that the DFMs have to contribute transaction data, they can't just be watching the data but not contributing data. Do we have anything, any language?
In which agreement are you thinking that it should be in?
Well, I don't know if it exists in the license agreement, but do we have any language anywhere that's, and I think it should be in the license agreement. I didn't see it unless I missed it, but says, you can't just, you've
I
got to.
almost feel like it should be in the DFM member agreement.
I think is in,
There's something in there about anonymized transaction data.
yeah,
But I think the point is that they must contribute, right? Not
Yeah.
just that they can't choose to be able to do it. And I don't know if it spells that out in such terms, but it really does need to be very specific of, their
Mandatory.
license is
yeah.
their license
It's-
is conditional on the fact of their ongoing participation and contribution of their shared data and transactions.
Yeah, it's in the purpose. To benefit, the solution requires DFMs to securely share their anonymized data to the blockchain network via APIs.
But is that a contractually signed agreement?
No, it looks like it's just part of the purpose paragraphs
Yeah.
So it needs
in the agreement.
Yep.
I'm looking at the agreement now, and I see the purpose, but I don't know that. And perhaps, and guys, tell me if I'm worried about something I don't need to worry about, but I'm envisioning a potential DFM that wants to sit on the sidelines, doesn't want to contribute anything, but sure wants access to that competitive information.
Yeah. So what Keith was saying yesterday was that when that happens, that we would have the ability to be able to kick them out because they weren't complying with what their license agreement was, or their member agreement was, which would them potentially put them in an unlicensed role.
Yeah, I think you have a legitimate concern there, Denise. If the language isn't couched in such a way that it's contractual, then we can say that's our purpose, but if it's not, they are required to, and they're signing off that yes, they understand that that's a requirement to maintain this agreement in force, then we can state our purpose all day long, and it
Right. A
still
purpose
doesn't hold
document
up.
is not a condition.
Yeah.
We need a conditional statement.
And I feel like that should be in the license agreements in both
Yep.
the non-equity and the equity versions.
Yeah, they need to be signing off on their commitment to contribute that data. And if at any point they cease to contribute that data, for something other than a, loss of, some
Connectivity
we've got to have a way to give them, space if they have a power outage or there's there's weird reasons why they might cease to contribute data for a short period of time, but
A cure period.
yeah.
They need a cure time.
There needs to be the requirement that for them to continue in full force with access to the platform, that they are actively contributing their data through API stream or whatever it is, the technology verbiage that's appropriate there.
Okay, I think that, thanks for that language, Linda, because I was trying to capture that because it was very well said. And it sounds like we agree that that should be, again, for the purpose of the minutes, that should be in the license agreements.
I think that's the most appropriate place.
I think it is. Anyone disagree with that?
I think that sounds right.
And we're good.
Okay, it's not an official vote, but just, okay, because then we'll have to make certain that that language gets added to the license agreements. And we're working with Chris on that, by the way.
Which, by the way, it might make sense to just bring up the document that I shared with you via email for the steering committee to be able to review also. It seems that there is some SEC regulation elements about being able to raise capital like this that have to do with identifying the investor as being an accredited investor. And an accredited investor includes companies. You have that handy, Denise?
Yeah, I'm sharing it right here. Okay, there it is.
Give everybody a minute to peruse.
Expand that. There we go.
You see that all right?
Can you make it a little bigger?
I can. Is that better?
Yep.
And Denise, there's actually a second email that I sent you following this one
Yes.
that has the response to my question to him.
Do you want me to bring that one up, or you guys, is this the best one?
When everybody's ready.
Okay,
This one's the right one right now, but
Can you scroll down a little,
sure.
please?
So because this would be considered general solicitation, that's where the pain point is.
so that was kind of my question back to Chris was, our shareholders are not going to be people, they're going to be companies, and is this still applied the same way? And he has cited 2 cases that he felt were relevant.
Mhm. Yeah, the blue sky laws are not fun.
It feels like we're putting up, I don't want to say roadblocks, but it feels like it's getting more and more complicated. And that's so what we're not trying to do.
Mhm.
So the easier way to be able to do this is, instead of them actually getting stock, is that they would have an option, a voting option. And then you don't have to go through all of this, because there's an option that converts or a warrant that converts. Same thing, turns into the same equity that's in a reserve for that classification, but it's a warrant for it. They don't take it on their books right away. It's a future asset.
Mhm.
But is it still selling a future asset? So it's selling a security. It's just putting a waiting period. I mean, I think
I know.
I think the DFMs would be willing to pay $100,000 to secure their voting rights. I mean, I know you want ownership, and you will be able to distribute over time equity to engaged DFMs, but if you didn't tie it to a sale, right? If you didn't tie it to that amount, then I mean, why can't they just purchase a license agreement? Why can't that be the sale, not the sale of equity?
So they can. I mean,
Right.
the sale of equity was all about sweetening the deal with a piece of them getting a piece of the company, but it was also part of what our discussion was, that was in the general group that included, Dex Freight, where, the ask was made specifically, would this be meaningful for you to be able to have equity in the company?
Mm.
And it was certainly, an
Right,
element that was influential.
The equity could be gifted, and it could be gifted based on participation over time rather than money up front. So that might be a way to manage it, where we don't have to have this barrier to entry. They're paying for a license. They're getting a vote up front. That's the vote is what they're getting, but the vote isn't tied to shares. But as they participate over time, there can be an allocation of shares based on participation. I mean, you can ask to see if that might still have question marks around it, but I mean, this stuff is a headache. I mean, it is
No
an
kidding.
absolutely unadulterated headache.
Linda, your scenario seems like it parallels how the DFMs could, participate in the working group, and then, based on 3 months of participation with 70% voting record, potentially have the opportunity to be voted into steering committee.
So what if the equity is the earn-in? You know, I mean, they pay their license fee, but by participating in working groups and
they gather equity from that.
yep.
So that's what kind of what Linda said, then you tie their shares to participation.
Yeah, I think that would get us past this question mark. And I mean, there's no arguing the value of the license that you're giving them. I mean, them purchasing a license doesn't
Right,
mess
but
with
there's a
any.
subscription agreement that we've put together
Yeah.
that they're actually purchasing equity, which is what is
Right, but just don't do that and have it be them purchasing the license, and don't even tie shares to that agreement at all. So what you have to do is disconnect the exchange of funds with the distribution of shares. That has to have a total disconnect. So if over time they can earn shares through participation, that's not connected to money, right? You're not having that contractual relationship over the shares. So you don't run afoul, I don't think, of any of the SEC's stuff. And they could not participate. They could pay your $1,000, have your license, use the platform, but never participate in steering committees. And they're not somebody you want to have having equity stake in the company, right? I mean, you want people that are actively engaged and contributing to the growth of the community and giving their insights and having engagement. And those are the people you want owning the company, because they're going to be the ones over time that are, I mean, your joint shareholders.
And you would have the differential between the two classes, right? The $50,000 class and the $100,000 class. Right, because the $100,000 class would be potentially working right alongside in the working groups, the $50,000 class, but then they're eligible to be granted stock.
I'm not sure you would need it.
Mm-mm.
I'm not sure you need it. So if you spend
Yeah.
$100,000, you are purchasing a license and you're onboarding, right? And then over time, if you participate, then you are granted shares, right? Is what we're suggesting.
yeah. You're granted voting shares.
You're
You're
granted
you're
voting
granted voting shares that allow you to be able to participate in the steering committee.
But everything up to that point, wasn't that the same for that N class? You buy in, you're participating, you're providing subscription data, anonymized data.
So what actually we're suggesting is that we just have a member class, and it's not E or N, and all of these then would apply, right? All of this here, and then everyone would be eligible to receive a voting share if they have evidence of participation.
So what's the avenue to actually owning shares that have, distribution attached to them? Is the voting share really the only thing that was going to be available anyway?
Yes.
Or is there there's not a financial
So what
tie-in?
Linda, what you and I were going to do was to be able to convert common shares to this new class of stock, where that stock class would be a voting share, a DFM member voting share. That was one of the resolutions that would be made in the bylaws, was to convert those, and then those shares would be available. And that can still take place, but doesn't have to take place right now if we're not issuing those shares right now.
Mm-hmm.
Right. It means that we're changing the license agreement if we go in this direction, right?
That's why I'm pausing here, because it's changing a lot of things.
Yes, it is. It should be somewhat palatable to Raj, right? Or he's the only DFM that's heard it, because we did, we're sort of on public record at one of the earlier governance meetings that we were going to do this, but we're still saying we're going to do it, but it's just a bit of a nuance. It being.
Well, it's a discovery from legal investigation of
Mhm.
what the mechanism is for being able to do this that is capable of being accomplished. And in doing so, what we've realized is that the participating members, when the members come on board, they have to be able to demonstrate their participation before they can earn equity.
And that
And that's best for the
equity,
whole community.
that equity, from what you're saying, is only voting rights. It's not. Say the company is sold off. I don't see that happening, but were that to happen, are those voting shares evenly recompensed as the same as any other share? How does
So
how does
not
that class?
evenly.
Yeah.
Yeah, the way that I had initially laid it out for the DFM class from the previous discussions that we've talked about was that we would take 10% equity of the company and convert it to 40 positions, where those 40 positions would each be getting 1/4% as being what their equity share in the company was from the 10% that was allocated to be able to underwrite those 40 new shareholders.
Right, but a
The
quarter of
next group
1%
of
has value, right?
absolutely does, yes, but it
Other
also
than just
is.
voting.
It has value in the future. It has value 3 years from the date that where it can be converted, where the restriction period of time for that classification has matured.
Mm-hmm.
So there is value to it, cash value to it at a point in time, but it more than that is the fact that it has the super voting rights. It has the voting rights as being one of the limited exclusive companies that are authorized to be able to participate in being able to voice the direction of where this goes. And that exclusivity is what you're really trying to
Right.
create at the beginning. So the second wave of this that I've mentioned being these 100, we looked at doing another 10% of the company's value for the next 100 participants. And instead of them getting 1/4%, they would end up with 1/10%. But the company will have been much more valuable because of the fact that it's got 40 contributing members that are already on the steering committee and driving it into another place. And these 100 companies that are the next round are driving the value further. But the next round after that of the 160 or 260 companies that were in that last round would be something like, if it were 160 companies, then it would be like 8% for the 160 companies or something along those lines, where ultimately the DFMs would end up owning roughly 1/3 of the company.
Right. So unless you want to have to go through the paperwork of a Series A, a Series B, Series C, you're not going to be able to tie these voting shares to a transfer of cash value of any sort. You're going to have to tie it to participation.
Which we'd be tracking with the command center.
Yep. It'd be verifiable. It would be, I don't know how transparent, but I assume that we could make it transparent and auditable for sure. And
Definitely auditable.
On the
Not
blockchain.
completely transparent for everybody, but yes.
On the
Yeah.
blockchain, hashed preferably, yeah.
Well,
Yeah,
the voting and participation, didn't we say, at least for the working group, that would be by hand vote?
Yes.
We did.
So it's not which certainly
but
can
the
be recorded.
ideas,
Yeah.
but the ideas up to issues is the piece that's inside of the platform.
Got it.
But you're coalescing of the ideas, ideas into the issues is what goes up to the steering committee.
Yeah.
And that's where a true vote is captured by those who are authorized to vote.
So the scenario we were just talking about is this member class E. Does member class N then even exist anymore?
Not really, no.
they would be people that never earned their way past the contributing aspect of things, right? So they would never earn the voting shares in their class. So you would still have potentially people that are on the platform that never achieve an earned voting share.
Yeah, they're sharing their data, they're collecting information, they're accessing the platform, they're seeing the value from it, but they're not participating in any of the working groups.
Right.
They haven't tried to be able to get involved in the steering direction of what the company is doing.
Right. With $100,000 buy-in.
Yeah, but that's not the buy-in to vote. That's a buy-in
Oh, buy-in to participate.
That's
to
a
have a
and share.
license.
that's the license and the
Yeah.
ongoing fee, really.
Yeah, you have to have that distinction be really, really clean and have the evidence to show that it's really just the people that have contributed, that have engaged within these parameters, that then have the opportunity within the time sequence. And, you know, if you're looking at the first 40, are you once again looking at the first 40 of a certain class, of a certain level, or is it just the first 40 that come on board that meet these involvement parameters? They get the, like John said, the golden ticket, the golden voting ticket. Is that how it plays? But that'll, I believe, keep us clear of any SEC issues regarding, this being any type of security offering. But
I
we
think
might.
part of the, yeah, I was going to say part of the golden ticket though is the higher value of those shares, right? They're a piece of the company.
It doesn't
if they're
have to
into
be. The fact that they got to be the first 40, I mean, that's
I'm at the first 40 participating,
the first 40 participating, yeah.
right? Yeah.
So whether or not you add Glicken on top of that, it's already a greater share in the company than the next 100 are going to get. So I don't think you have to add an extra 4 points or, any of the examples that were given, because they're already getting a bigger piece of the pie by being an early mover. So, and hopefully they're going to be growing their companies substantially, right? They're going to be benefiting from the efficiencies and growing just by dint of being on the platform.
So Denise, have you made all these edits already?
No, but I've been taking notes, and there's just another wrinkle here but what does participation look like? Because now participation is tied to a significant, investment opportunity. We have to be really clear what that looks like. And also remember, in the original agreement, we said there's a phasing to this, right? And the phasing was after X months time, you're going to do this. And then, so what you're looking at now is we have to consider that phase 3 is still 11-person committee, doesn't actually commence until August 2021. So if I'm a DFN member, I'm not voting until August 2021.
Right. So they need to be participating within certain parameters up to that time to have the opportunity to be one of those votes being cast. Right. I mean, that's the space of time
That was
in
the
which
idea.
we have to build those parameters. And yeah, I mean, engagement over time, you're really earning your way into it. And if we did it for just a month or 2 months or 3 months, the SEC could ask, like, is this really, they just paid for it? Like, no, if you have this significant block of time and you can showcase engagement that was required to meet this opportunity, I mean, I think it builds our case to this not being a securities offering.
Yeah, so no one would be eligible according to this, until August 2021.
Right.
Right. So they have demonstrated their participation up into that time for the folks who joined first. But again, that means we have to be real clear on using the command center for the feature voting.
Well, yeah. So they'll be voting on ideas and issues, just not at the steering committee level.
Right.
Right.
And
They'll be
people that come in-
participating in those ideas and issues.
Yeah.
They won't be voting on them. They'll be commenting and communicating and adding things to it, and possibly adding new ones, right? But they currently don't have any voting in.
No. which is why we have to describe what participation looks like, and then how is it going to be captured. So Michael, this is a great discussion. It's, as you know, a bit of a different direction. It's going to require some changes to the documents. This is, of course, not insurmountable.
It's going to take a lot less time to amend the documents than it would be to go through the SEC compliant Series A documentation and implementation.
That was
I
scary.
mean, that's,
Yeah, it's reading that going. Oh,
yeah.
good.
I've seen it in relation to token offerings, and it's prohibitive in some cases. And I think the intent of this platform is such that something like that, it's not necessary, and therefore it should also not be prohibitive.
Right. Okay, so for, I think, next steps,
in the system.
of course,
Aren't you glad we strike the stuff?
this is the time to have it. These are good discussions. So I need to come back with a framework of what this would look like given this conversation, right? And so this is going to change, right? And I have to change the member agreements, which I can do. Do we want to tee that up to have a working discussion midweek, or do we want to do that next Friday? In other words, have the documents to you so we can have the discussion next Friday.
Yeah, I'm going to have an extremely full week next week. So if there's any way to make the working group be the Friday, that'll get me through our Thursday event, and I can give some focused effort there and not have it be too time.
Yeah, I
Well,
understand.
I mean, I know we're doing a lot, and everybody's doing a lot. I just, for me personally, I'll put in the vote for making Friday a working group. And I'm happy to review things in advance to that, but I don't have 2 hours in the middle of the week,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
That's fine with me.
That's fine with me. So that means I'll be spending a lot of time in the first part of the week and then reviewing it with Michael so we can make the 28th a very roll up your sleeves session. Michael, does that work for you?
Off the agenda that we did? It's my anniversary of the 28th. So yeah, that'd be great.
Can toast you and Renee.
Congratulations.
Please
You
start.
can send champagne to everybody.
Yeah.
Denise, as I went through the member agreements, I have a couple of small things to change out. So let you and I just talk quickly as you pull those together.
So I have a hard stop at 2:15, but we could do it later today, or if you want to shoot them to me, either way, Jeff, I could do it after.
I need to talk you through one of them. So how about just later today?
Okay, all right, that works. That works. I'll call you about this next call. All right, so I think we have a plan then. Does 1 p.m. on Friday, the 28th work?
I
Or 2?
think so. Yeah, one's fine for
1
me.
p.m.?
Yep.
I think we
That
probably,
works.
can we do 1 to 2:30?
Sure.
So these are going to be somewhat robust conversations. Michael, I know it is your anniversary, but are you okay if we carve out 90 minutes?
Yeah, that's fine. I'm hopeful that we can get some work done this week between you and I to try to tie these things as much together with the 2 attorneys that we've already got lined up to be able to do it with these changes in mind, and hopefully be at a place that next Friday we can review what the changes are. But I mean, we were pretty darn close, and this is a rewrite and a recalibration that I think we can get the progress done and get it done with. But I hate to lose 2 weeks of it being this week to next week, of being able to review it again in another working session, and then have another week to the next Friday before we get it done. So I'm hopeful that we can get these so that they're closer to being done for Friday. And if we feel comfortable in being able to get them completed next Friday, that we have at least the option to do that with the longer session.
Yeah, my intent was that you and I are going to be joined at the hip next week, my friend, early and often. So yeah, it would be documents that are in a very spiffy form to review next Friday, not just we're starting to work on them. So I hope you like me, Michael.
Good.
You're going to be
Do.
a lot of time with me.
Yep, I do. There's work to do.
When the documents get sent out, can they be in a format that can show edits, and the edits can actually be done straight into the document? Is that
Review
possible?
form? But you like just put the review form on, or Google Docs? I'm fine, whatever is easier.
Whatever you feel is most appropriate. I have like, notes and screenshots of documents, and it's cumbersome to try to manage, comments that way. So, I have like for the, one of the documents, the F, anyway, I've got like a couple of things that you may have already fixed, but because I'm just seeing the document that was sent out, I all of us giving the same suggestion or having notes and notes on little things that might need to shift isn't as time friendly as if I could see, oh, well, Denise already, fixed that
Hear that.
misspelling, or, corrected that, letter order, or, removed that
I know the
extra,
feeling. I
or
ask Denise way too often to send me a full set of documents again so that I can make sure I have the most recent thing. Because
Yeah.
there's nothing more frustrating than spending 2 hours reading a document and saying, all right, I got some changes to do. And
it's
then when
like,
I
oh,
meet with
did
you, they're
this.
not, I did that. Did you do
Yeah.
all of them? Or did you just do the
Yeah.
first 3 that I did? So I understand your point, and that work collaborative space is available. I mean, we have a Google Docs account, and we can certainly get versions of the document, or the current version of the document, into that platform if that would be easier for everybody to be able to collaborate with.
Yeah, I would appreciate it.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'll send the Google Docs link to everybody. And Linda, I'll still text you.
Okay, thank you.
Not a problem. But no, I agree. That's the right way to do it. And I'll also send a 1 to 2:30 meeting for next Friday. But Michael, you and I know I'll put some time on your calendar as well.
Yep.
Okay, yeah, thank you.
Very
Excellent.
good.
Yeah.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everybody. And sorry for the curveball of being able to have this discussion here at the beginning with the different classes, but I'm glad we were able to noodle through it in the 75 minutes of the call. So thanks, everybody, for your time.
Happy
Good.
to be here.
Thanks,
Thank you.
guys. Thank you.
Take care, guys.
Have a great weekend. Thanks.
Hey, Denise, do you want to just ping me when
Yes,
you're done with your meeting?
I sure will.
And we could do that over the phone. It doesn't need to be a Zoom if you don't like. I mean, if it's easier, either way.
Okay, that sounds great. I'll ping you in a little bit.
Okay, thanks. Bye.
Thanks, guys. Take care. Bye-bye.